and we'll let you know when we know more about where to head. And they called back about 5 minutes later and said that he was on his way to Vanderbilt, which is our Trauma One center here in the Middle Tennessee area. And I knew in my heart that if he was headed to Vanderbilt, his injuries were severe.
Right.
And, but being a woman of God and a strong woman of faith and knew the word and walked it out daily already, I hit my knees. And I immediately asked God to be with me, although I had no idea what was coming.
Right.
I knew he was with me.
Yeah.
And I engaged our family and friends and church to pray us through as I headed toward the hospital that day. And I was fortunate. Actually, David lived 5 hours at the hospital, and I was able to see him, not talk with him. I was told he could hear me, but he couldn't converse with me. But I actually had the amazing privilege of holding his hand when he passed from this life to the next.
Wow.
And that sounds so sad, and it was sad, but I consider it such an honor that God let me experience that and be the last thing talking to him and having him squeeze my hand as he left. And
grabbing onto that gratitude like we were just talking
that's
about.
right.
Yeah.
It's the little things, because there are some women who get phone calls and it's already happened. They're gone.
Yeah.
Or it's happened far away. And so all of the things, I believe that our journeys are always with Christ, working things together for our good, you know, and that was part of that. But boy, do you have to go through a lot of fertilizer. I hear you ladies call it fertilizer. You have to plow through a lot of fertilizer to find those truths that are, you know, that pass, you know, our understanding. And so that was the journey and the lesson, that finding the beauty in the midst of the ashes and finding the recovery that God had for me as I walked through this, but not necessarily giving it to me immediately or making it better today, right now. You know, there were moments of that, but we have to walk through it. Our journeys are about walking through, not going to a destination.
Right.
And so that's how it was with me.
And that's got to be very intentional. I mean, you have to fight all of that grief that's coming on you to find those things.
Absolutely. And in my journey, I was sad and I was grieving, but really, you know, I thought, well, gosh, you know, I'm a strong believer and God can do this. You know, the books say, you know, 5 to 7 years. Let's do this in 3.
Right.
You know, and I kept trying to rush through it.
Yeah.
And, you know, now I can look back in hindsight and see God, you know, saying, oh, baby, bless your heart. You know, we're not going to work through this that way. This isn't a destination that you get to and then it's all better.
Right.
This is finding me in the midst of the sorrow, in the midst of the tears, letting me store those tears for you in golden bowls, catching each one of them.
And and when I was reading your book, one of the things that struck me is it seemed like some of your most intentional, deepest grieving came after you were remarried.
Yeah. And that was confusing to me because I really, God did a real solid for me in helping me find another love of my life. And rather quickly, I married Kai within 2 years after David's accident. And I thank him for it. I just think it's wonderful. But what I didn't realize is that some of my most intense grieving would be with my husband there, my new husband there with me, getting me, helping me and encouraging me through that. So I was very thankful for that, but it surprised me and it confused me. And of course, the enemy wants to come along and plant shame and doubt and steal from us a beautiful thing that God's trying to do for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he'll use other people who don't understand, or he'll use our own thought patterns that we're not surrendering to him. He'll use whatever he can to get us off track. So I found that in that year 5, 6, and 7, when I really thought I should be emerging, everything's great now, I found myself still going around the mountain of despair and hopelessness and shame. And that was confusing to me. And it got very hopeless for me because I thought, what is wrong with me? Here God has put my life back together, but it's not the life I wanted. I'm still incredibly sad. I still wish that my husband could have walked our daughter down the aisle when she got married and not her little brother. You know, I wish. And one day when I was just crying out in despair and hopelessness, you know, it was almost like God just arrested me and said, you know, we can keep going around this mountain, or you can make a decision to get out of the pit and to flip a switch and set a new mindset, start really activating what my word says, not just reading it and having it up here as head knowledge, but activating it so it will sink down into your heart and transform your life.
Wow.
And, you know, we learn in Romans 5 that suffering produces perseverance.
Yes, it does.
And so it was the perseverance that really held me to keep going on, that God wasn't finished. So that perseverance that the suffering had already produced in my life started to be activated. And then the perseverance brings character, and character hope. And then it goes on to say, hope doesn't disappoint. And that's where I was going. That was my getting out of the pit plan, is walking through that Romans 5, because the fact of the matter is, Jesus already told us that in this world, we're going to have stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to have
messy
trouble.
stuff.
Yeah. I'm just so encouraged of how when Jesus was getting ready to exit and the cross was coming, all that in John, I think it's around 14 and 15, he's telling his disciples, I mean, he knows what's coming, and he's trying to prepare them because it's going to get ugly, and it's going to get ugly, and they're going to be confused. They're going to be disappointed. They're going to be filled with shame and all of the things that we feel today in the 21st century.
Of course.
And so I love that he already said, hey, in this world you'll have troubles, but take heart, I've overcome. You don't have to walk it out alone. The victory is already yours. Is the sadness there? Yes. I loved what you said, Paula, about grief is a part of our experience. Disappointment, sorrow, that is part of our life here in this fallen world. But I love that our Savior has already taken care of it. He didn't, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell him that it's going to be hard. Oh, ooh, you know, or, oh wow.
He told us.
You know, he told us and he demonstrated it. Yeah, he demonstrated it. And I love that even in that place of grieving, when he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead, he knew what was happening. But
he cried.
The human part of him had the emotion of mourning, of sorrow, of grief, of not only his own, but Mary and Martha. He was in touch with that. And I love then it gave me permission to feel the sadness, whether it was the day at the hospital or if it was 5 years later. If I still had sadness to process, it was okay.
But there's a lie that a lot of people do believe, that if you just find the next husband or the next relationship or the next replacement, that somehow or another is supposed to just instantly erase all the other.
Make everything okay. That'll just make it better. I'll be happy when.
Right, and that is such a lie. Because it's not that God doesn't bring healing and restoration through that next piece when he provides it. But that's not what makes you instantly healed. You're getting remarried did not go zap. You're perfect now. Fairy tale again, kind of thing. And I loved how your book shared that, because it made it real that whatever loss it is, I lost 2 babies during pregnancy. I've had to grieve those, and I've had to re-grieve and go through that process. And your book gave me permission to work through that process. One of them was due December 23rd. So here we are coming up, you know, every year we have the holiday coming up, and I go, okay, God, here we are. And I have been able to grieve different levels of that loss. I have 3 kids, but having 3 kids doesn't just Zoom fix.
Right.
That's right.
It's not a replacement child. There's no replacement husband. We are individuals, and we feel for each one of those individuals.
That's absolutely
just
right.
the way God did. God does every day, because we're made in his image, and all of us are important and have that place. So, Julie, how did you know that you were, as we say, blooming, coming out of this and coming into a different season?
Well, when I flipped the switch, God started teaching me day by day how to manage my sorrow. What he had told me is that you are starting to manage your sorrow now, not letting your sorrow manage you. You're telling your sorrow what to do.
Big change.
Yeah, that was a big change for me, because what it did is give me the freedom to be in sorrow, but know that I'm moving out. I'm about to get up. The name of the book.
Right. It's a great name, by the way.
Thank you. That's how it came, because it's like, today, God, I'm in this big comfy chair and I don't even want to go outside. Yeah. I'm hanging on by a thread. But I'm going to get up. One of these days, I'm going to get up. I'm going to get out of this chair. And that actually comes from a verse in the Bible, Micah 7:8, that says, do not gloat over me, my enemy. Though I have fallen, I will rise. Though I sit in darkness, the Lord will be my light.
I've got to add a funny story to that, just because there's so much hardship in loss and grief.
Yeah.
But I had texted my son, my oldest son, who's 17, I had texted him asking him if he was awake yet, because I was gone and checking on his schedule. And he actually took his phone, took a photograph of the cover of your book and texted it to me. I'm about to get up.
That's awesome.
I laughed so hard, but I was like, I've got to tell Julie that the hope and the joy side of that, God can use that in all kinds of little places.
Yeah. Well, and it's important to know, because as we talked about, being in this world where there are troubles, terrible things are happening out there, and terrible things happen to us. God didn't cause those things to happen to us. We are in a world at war, and there is an enemy that is out to destroy us. But the beautiful thing is that God will take us in the midst of that and renew that place and help us learn to manage those sorrows. And so,
heal.
Yes. And so the beauty in all of that is that we show up every day giving our lives to Him and saying, here I am. I'm going to magnify you, God. I'm going to make you bigger than this problem. Because when I make you bigger than the problem diminishes. And that's what He has for us.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We don't have to make Him bigger. He's already enormous.
That's right. Yeah.
We just have to recognize and see how big He really is and how powerful He truly is, and recognize again the eternal perspective of, this isn't where the story ends. This isn't just my small life that's affected and going on here. This goes on bigger, badder, better.
Yeah.
That's what God brings to the table, all of that power. Amen. And all that healing power along with it.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Yay. And Julie, thank you so much for sharing, because you are our ex-victim of the week.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, so we have the reminder to bloom today. So you can use the Bloom in the Dark or Bloom Today, depending on how your day is going.
Okay.
Have your coffee.
Beautiful.
And the ex-victim tattoo that matches this, which is, again, our statement to say, even when you've been the victim of grief and loss and damage of any kind, that you can find the hope and the blooming in that. And that Christ's resurrection life came out of a dark, dank grave. It wasn't in the sunshine. Yeah. And so we celebrate you and the fact that not only have you done that, but you're using your story to help provide that hope and healing and the permission to grieve that you have in your book. And
thank you.
The fact that you use the fertilizer thing with our saying that says that we use the fertilizer of our past to bloom today.
Yeah, that's good.
A free PDF copy of the Bloom in the Dark book and a full list of Bloom Today's coaching tools can be found on bloomtodaytv.com. Then visit Bloom Today's Facebook group for deeper conversation.